It's supposed to look allegedly like a watch laid out.
Oh, really?
Like the bell&ross with the straps and the and
Gotcha.
the
Okay.
dial.
Okay.
And it kind of looked like hands a little bit. Now, again, I
You
don't know
have
if that's
to be
something
a bell&ross enthusiast.
I don't know if that's something we
to
all
go
read
that deep.
into it, or if that was like an actual thing.
You have
I've
to
heard
be a
it,
bell&ross enthusiast to
so,
go
and
that
I've always
deep.
gone with it because I thought that was cool.
On this episode of the Watch Factor, I have a very good friend of mine, one of the collectors that joins me as a part of the Red Bar group for Detroit. Joe is here to talk to us a little bit about his collection. We've got a number of different pieces here, not the entire collection, but some very interesting things. So Joe, welcome to the channel.
I think it's good to be here. Thank you.
All right. If you can, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and give us some of your background.
Okay. My name is Joe Pytel. I'm from the area here. I met Kurt a few years ago at Red Bar, and before the pandemic, we used to attend pretty regularly.
Yeah.
I'm an attorney, but most of my free time now is spent raising a family and collecting watches. So.
Cool. Yeah. Well, Joe, thank you for being here. So we have a couple different layouts of watches here, and we're going to kind of go by each individual group. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting about your collection, Joe, was your love for Bell&Ross. Mm-hmm. Being someone who's into a number of different brands, when I first met you and saw the layout of all the different Bell&Rosses, I knew it was going to be a time that we needed to talk to get a better understanding. So let's start with this. Tell me what drew you into Bell&Ross and what continues to draw your appreciation for the brand.
Okay. So before I got into some of the higher end watch collecting, I was collecting more of the kind of moderate stuff, some Hamiltons, things in that kind of price point. I was always drawn more to tool watches, something that was more functional, either a diver or something that you could wear all the time. Okay. In fact, even today, I have very few dress watches in my collection just because I don't know, I've always been more about the function and the readability and the usability.
Gotcha.
Certainly waterproofness has always been an important thing for me. I don't know why I feel like if you're in the water, you should have a watch on. So as I was kind of developing that taste. It kind of sounds silly, but I saw a character on a show wearing one. Okay. And as soon as I saw the square on his wrist, it just stood out to me. And it's funny because I'm sure lots of people watch that show and you've never noticed his Community I think it was on NBC. Okay. Joe Pytel played the character, and he's kind of a minor watch collector as well. But as soon as I saw it, I loved it, and I spent time trying to figure out who it was because they're not, at the time, this was probably 12 years ago or so now. They weren't as ubiquitous as they are now, right? Mm-hmm. They're still kind of growing, and they weren't on every channel, and they weren't being talked about as much as they are now. But as soon as I found it, I was just in love. And then that was all I wanted to get. As soon as I finished law school, I knew I was going to get one. And once I did, there was so many different options, so many different things about the brand that I just fell in love with them. Partly because I really like the aesthetic of it. This square design, they call it circle in a square right off the cockpit of an airplane. Okay. It just resonates with me. I love that I get a lot of questions about it when I wear it.
It's a conversation piece.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. But then I also like the story of the brand, where the two gentlemen who started it were friends for a long time. They bring a lot of their kind of French heritage to Swiss watchmaking, right? So there's kind of the overlap of the two countries there, and the French styling with the Swiss professional watchmaking. And I like that they're still very heavily involved in the company, and they're actually somewhat reachable. They're not unobtainable like some other brands where you can. The price point's right. The people at the company are accessible. There's a number of examples of them listening to the fans, people like them. In fact, this piece is one of them here. They released this with an orange Velcro strap or a nylon strap, and that was kind of people had kind of demanded that. Gotcha. And then for a long time, they wanted an orange rubber strap, and I think 5 years ago or so, they released one, then they released another one. And that was really just listening to what people wanted, which I think is awesome. To have a company that's big and mass-produced and professional
but still able to connect feedback.
Right.
So this reflects what Bell&Ross will kind of call their instrument line, correct? And then they have vintage. They even have kind of experimental as another arm. So can you walk us through these 5 examples and kind of tell us a little bit about what each one kind of interested you about?
So this is my first one. This is the 0192. So it's their basic 3-hand no date.
Okay.
It's the big ones, 46 millimeter case with the locking crown. It's simple, it's clean, it's time only, it's super reliable, easy to read, good lume. What really interested me about it was how big the case is, but kind of how small it actually wears.
So 46, but feels a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
Okay.
Part of that's because it's not real tall. And then the way the lugs kind of break across the wrist, they're not real long.
Gotcha.
And then I always liked that they had their own style strap. I know it's similar to like a Panerai and other straps where it kind of has some of that design. But I like that it's a little bit wider and then kind of skinnies down. And it really, these are big proportions, but it really doesn't fit that big. I mean, it's certainly bigger than, a dress watch or even maybe some standard Rolex sizes.
Yeah.
But compared to some of the massive watches out there, it just wasn't doing that. And I like that there was a reason for it, right? When it wasn't just big to be big.
Right.
These proportions match what's in the cockpit.
What's in the cockpit, yeah.
Right. And a lot of pilots were wearing these at the time, like fighter pilots and stuff. I think even now they still provide O3s to the French Air Force.
Yep, correct.
So that's what drew me to this, was just the form, the function, and the fact that you really can beat this one up and it's gonna stay working and be very legible, very readable all the time.
Okay. And then from there, where do we on the instrument?
So this one, kind of a funny story. So when I was in law school, I was at an interview program in Chicago that all like third-year law students go to interview with different firms. And I knew they had a bell&ross boutique there, or at least a store that carried them, whereas up here it's kind of hard to find anything.
Okay.
So my wife and I walked in there we had one son at the time. We walked in there, and I knew I wanted this one. Like that was what I knew I was going to buy, but I wanted to see some more in person. And she really liked that one. So after I bought this one, I knew, like I liked the way it looked. She really liked the way it looked. I thought that would be a good second one to have. So I bought that one.
It almost feels heavier than
it does, yeah. And it's significantly smaller. It's 42 millimeter instead of 46. But if you look, the case is maybe even a touch thicker.
Yeah.
And that's their 0392. Okay. So it's the cousin to this one, or however you want to describe it, but it does have a date.
Gotcha.
And this one, lume is a little different on this one. It's I think it's a minute hand is green and the rest is blue.
Wonderful.
So you get the contrast at night.
It seems like they, again, from the instrument standpoint, always taking inspiration from what's in the cockpit, whether it be in a airplane or in a helicopter or so, things like that.
Yep.
Okay. So then where do we go from here after that second?
So this was one that was released. It's probably, I think it's until the 05. It was the only one that I bought contemporarily. Like the other ones had been out, right, and I knew about them. This one was released, and I got in line for it right away. Because that orange strap that came with it, I really liked it. But just the touch of orange on the pusher, I don't know why. It's just
subtle detail. Just the perfect detail, right?
Because you could still wear this very much every day. It's not like an orange case or something, right? But there's a nice little extra touch to it, and you put the orange strap on here, the rubber or the nylon strap, and it really stands out.
Okay.
These were numbered to 250 originally, but they were so popular they did a second run.
Right.
And so the second run goes 251 to 500.
Gotcha.
Supposedly, this was the first one sold in the U.S.
Now, any specific reason why it was such a limited run?
They tend to do a lot of limited runs on things that are unusual colors. This was a standard run, but now, starting just before this, they started doing, if they introduced an interesting color, they would keep it limited. I think just to keep production down, and so they don't get over invested in something that may not sell. I would assume, right?
So BR0194.
Yep. The 94s are the chronographs.
Okay.
So this one, this is back to the big boy again. This is the biggest bell&ross I own because it's the full size case and it's also quite thick. Now what's interesting is it wears smaller than that one, and I think because it's black, which tends to kind of skinny it down a bit.
Yep.
And even though the lugs are the same, the strap breaks a little different because it's sitting up a little taller.
Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha.
It's definitely heavier. But it feels like it takes up less space on the wrist. This one, when we were in the process of moving, and I had an old Corvette, I knew it was just time to move it on because I just wasn't driving it very much because we had at that point 3 kids. We have 5 now, so I definitely wouldn't have time now. So I sold it, and then with part of what I sold it for, I bought this, and that was a black 1994 Corvette. And this is a black 9.4.
Oh, okay. Love connection.
So I thought that'd be kind of a cool way to kind of keep the car around a little bit. This is the their power reserve model in the 03. So this is an 0390. It's a big date up top, and then the power reserve. The only other bell&ross I had that I got rid of was an 0351, which is same case except black, big date, and then where the power reserve is, there's a second time zone.
Okay.
And I traded it for the officer, this one here.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't regret it because I really like that one, but a little bit I regret it because I miss it in mine. Because I got rid of it because I knew I was getting this one and they were too similar.
Oh, really?
Like aesthetically, they're like, I know that's splitting hairs, right? But like even the dial layout was exactly the same.
I mean, it's an interesting design, square and a circle together, right? But it is very simplistic. It's very clean. It is very crisp, and I can kind of understand. I mean, at the end of the day, the legibility is spot on. Even in the case where I was staring at this one with the blue, and I was asking myself, but I agree with you. Like the legibility is still there, even with the darker blue on a matte black. It's extremely clear. I think what also helps is that all of these look like they're anti-reflective coating on it, so there's no glare.
Very flat glass, too.
Very flat glass
so
in the profile. So you don't get anything that's bouncing back, light bouncing back. You just kind of see straight into the. I kind of love that feeling. It almost feels like there's a deeper connection, right? Even though you may not be in the military, like because it's coming specifically from an inspiration of what's going on in that cockpit, you kind of have that on your wrist and go from there. So, and what's the last one?
The last one is this is the one I just got. So this is the only ceramic case out of all these. These are all stainless and PVD or just stainless. This is also the only case style that I have like this. If you notice, all the screws are misaligned because they're functional screws.
Okay.
Which is actually more authentic, I think, to the cockpit because they're screwed in from the front. This one, they're actually screwed in from the back, and these are just heads that hold them on.
Gotcha.
So they're aligned, which was another thing that I think a lot of people wanted. And it certainly jumps out at you. Once you see it, you can't not see it, right? Those are all misaligned. But I think that adds character.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I'll
you don't pay attention to it until you actually mention it, and then you see it, and you're like, okay, all right, is that gonna mess with me?
Right, yeah.
They're gonna mess with me.
Well, I remember when I first got them, like, do these need to be fixed? Are these not in all the way? So I can honestly say I like both. Like, I appreciate this because I think it's an advance in aesthetics and refinement. But I like this because it's kind of classic and true to form.
It's funny that even though this kind of has almost like a green PVD coating to it, it's a sexy watch to me. Like,
it wears pretty easy with everything. I was a little concerned about that. Like, am I going to get this and only be able to wear it like a black shirt? But it really kind of works. I put it on black rubber, and that worked really well because if you notice, the screws and the crown are black. So there's a little bit to draw in there.
Now, is Bell&Ross moving into, because this looks like it's a sandwich style.
Are
they starting to move into that direction?
No, so they have a couple that are. Some of their more highly loomed dials are. But no, the counterparts are. So this is technically an 0392. Okay. Right, so this is the same model as this. Okay. And their new ones are ceramic, but still just the painted on markers and stuff. And this one is the homage to the MA1 pilot jacket, which was green on the outside, orange on the inside, which is why you have the green dial and the orange hands. And then that strap is actually reversible. It's meant to be flipped around. That's why both these keepers are loose.
Wow.
So you can rotate them around.
How cool is that?
Which is cool. It's, I don't know. It's another thing. I mean, it's certainly a little bit of a gimmick, right? To try to connect to that thing. But it's something that was very functional for pilots.
Right, absolutely.
When they made that watch, or they made that jacket and made it that color green and that color red, there was a function for both of those, or orange function for both of those, so that you could see the orange at night. And I think orange is the last color the human eye sees in the dark. That's why it's on so many dialers. So to have that functionality here, again, it's not going to work like the jacket will. Right? But it's cool. It's cool that it's legit and actually followed that. And it definitely ties back into their aviation history. So
let's start with this one, just because this looks like classic, original, early days of Bell&Ross.
I'm pretty sure this is the oldest one I have. I don't know what year it's from, but and this looks very similar to the ones that they were making with Sen. And it still has that same style that they use today. It's a diver. The model number on this one kind of eludes me a little bit. I've heard it called a few different things. Generally, it's referred to as a 300M classic or something like that. 300 meters.
Okay.
It's a classic. It doesn't have doesn't follow some of the other naming convention.
Now, you were saying earlier before we started recording, so Bell&Ross starts off in 1992, right? Two good friends that know each other since
Forever, yeah.
forever, right? And you said they actually started Bell&Ross as a
university project
of some sort,
yeah.
right? Okay.
And then I don't know if as part of that they hooked up with Zinn, or if it was right after, but they started producing for them. So all those
Zinn, the
dials,
German brand, today. Okay.
And so everything would have been made in Germany then.
Gotcha.
Right. Even though it's still headquarters in Paris. And then after that relationship ended, they moved to Switzerland.
Gotcha. So early model watches would potentially show up as being Bell&Ross
By Zinn.
And even that on the dial.
On the dial. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And this one, I don't know how long after that this was. I think it's a few years, but it still has a very similar aesthetic to it. Kind of a cool diver with a chronograph.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
With the lock and crowns and stuff.
I love the combination, almost pan the dial.
It is, right? Yeah.
Right, very clean.
Yep. And again, this is kind of the early days of making it usable, very readable, and durable.
Yeah. The and percent is interesting. I think it was Rossillo, one of the founders, that talked about the explanation of the and. He said it was reflective of, he said, unification of competency. And I was like, okay, all right. But as he went further, he basically said at the end of the day, we're bringing together everything from watchmakers to artisans, designers, engineers, folks with military background, bringing them together to create these different products. And so he's like, the and stands for the reflection of bringing everybody together in our frame. So I thought that was pretty cool and interesting to find out. Now this thing here, which looks like almost like wire lugs. I don't know if it technically falls under wire lugs or
close,
not, but tell me a little bit about this piece.
So this is in their World War I line. And I don't think they made this for very long. They made it in several different dial colors, but they were all in that kind of gray tone, silver tone. It's a specific kind of silver. I'm terrible with metallurgy, but it's, I don't know if it's something they developed or something they developed with someone else, but it tarnishes less than
stainless steel?
Silver.
Silver, okay.
Sterling silver.
Okay.
So it holds its color a little bit better. The dial is also silver on this one. And then a few other ones, the dial was just darker. And they sold them, what's interesting, it comes on, this one came on this strap, and then a couple that came on gray, but they also sold them with really wild colors, like red and blue and orange, and it surprisingly works well with that. That's a manual wind, but what I like about it is you can definitely dress that up.
Okay.
Right? It's really simple, really basic. Doesn't look anything like the square watches.
Totally different direction.
Right? But the numbering and stuff is still there. Right? That aesthetic is still carried over.
That connection is still there. Yeah. Yeah, this is beautiful. I mean, it could, depending on how you strapped it, dress watch, but I can easily see if you were to switch out this type of strap, you could actually make it more casual and even sporty. And it almost feels a little bit like a pocket watch.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
to those cues. So
I think that was where the inspiration came from, was those early pocket watches that were converted.
Right? Where they just end up soldering the actual, you have to put it on the wrist for the military. Oh, that's beautiful. Very clean.
Yeah, very cool. I think that's my only watch that is a precious metal. I think I might have a little bit of white gold into my Rolex, but that's about it.
Now, this watch I've seen you wear, this is the one I've drew it over a little bit, and this is the Officer.
The 126 Officer. So in their vintage line, well, they've changed it now. It's BRV2, whatever the thing is, usually back to the 9492. But this is when they were calling the 123 and the 126. So the 126 is a chronograph. And then the Officer meant that instead of having the numbers around the bezel, you had the more polished look and polished numbers and more of a what an officer would wear in his dress uniform.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because I'm looking at him going like, man, that crystal is raised.
Yeah, big time.
I mean, that way is raised high, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a very clean, very dressed up type of watch. And again, still very legible, and to your point, still in the essence of what you would think from Bell&Ross.
Yep. And one thing I really like about it too is, even though it's a little bit dressier, the registers are large, right? It's not, they don't tone those down. It still has a very tool watch face in a dressier watch style.
Yeah, I love the versatility that Bell&Ross, at least from what you're showing me, has within the lineup. especially coming from the instrument line to this. So let's skip the BR5 really quick, but let's talk about the GMT here.
So it's a GMT with a third time zone, right? Because this is unidirectional.
Okay.
And what's cool about this, and I know a lot, certainly Rolex has done this, the multicolor bezel. It shows you day or night, right? What I like about this, same thing, the crystal is pretty raised.
Yeah.
For the style watch. Bracelet's really nice. It's super comfortable. This is like just a good, if you had one watch, that would pretty much cover everything.
Wow. Yeah, legibility is spot on.
Yeah.
Very clean.
Yeah, the white is really crisp against the black. It's really easy to read.
What I've been shocked at, and I'm asking myself, is because I'm wearing glasses, but the date window,
it's pretty small.
It's pretty small, but it's very clean.
Yeah.
Like you can read it.
You can read it, but you can almost ignore it too. That's
Yes.
one thing that I talk about constantly with some of the other watch nerds is how wrong so many date windows are. Like you get a really nice dial, really good layout, and you'll throw the date at 4:30 on an angle.
Yeah.
It's so lazy. It's an afterthought. It looks terrible.
Yes.
This is at 4:30, but it's moved away from the numbers.
Correct.
And it's small.
Yeah. It doesn't break up anything.
And it's angled correctly.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And like I said, you can almost ignore it. That's how it is on their 03s as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about this puppy here. Now this one was received with controversy.
Yep, for sure.
Right?
Yep.
Some people said this was a commercial, hyped up watch in the era of everybody going into, hey, let me try to look like AP, let me try to look like a Patek Philippe. Do you feel like they kept the essence of the brand, and do you agree with that statement or disagree with that statement?
Well, I definitely agree that there was, I think this was one of the earlier ones in that wave of new Genta style watches that are coming out. I definitely think that was a movement within the industry that everybody has jumped on, and certainly part of that is to take advantage of that. And I think that's definitely the case. But they're really, out of their square style watches, which is what this kind of the DNA comes from that. They didn't really have any braceleted, more, they call it an urban explorer, but more like an everyday watch you wear that isn't on rubber.
Gotcha.
Right? So I think the need for that was there. It didn't have to be an integrated bracelet. It could have been, just a regular bracelet. But I think with the way the case is made and everything, it really works. And obviously, like the other watches that you mentioned that look like that, I mean, we're comfortable with that aesthetic, right? We like the way it looks. I am totally biased, so I like it. But I do think they kept the DNA of the brand, because if you look, the numbers are the same.
Yes.
The top screws, on the case are the same. It's not a square within a circle, but it's close. It's like a rounded square.
Correct.
So you can see how that comes out of the instrument line. And really, compared to their vintage line, that's the first one that they've moved into that took that in another direction. They have another line called the BRX, which is more their experimental stuff, and it's still based on the square watch, but it's different. It's kind of meant to be a different thing. This is their first true new line that takes advantage of that history and that aesthetic of the brand, but moves it in a new direction.
Yeah.
I really like it. It's super comfortable. I think the dial is just awesome to look at.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think it modes well. I think, to your point, it's the evolution of the brand, right? Being able to respond. And I'm sure there's been feedback from collectors that are already heavy into bell&ross. Hey, I want something that gives me, again, still to the DNA of the brand, but also takes me in a little bit of a different direction. So 4
or 5 years, every time they release something, it's like, oh man, I gotta have it. Like, it's just something about it. When the 05 came out, like, there was a point where, like, I did not understand integrated bracelets at all, because for every watch I have, I probably have 10 straps.
Yeah.
Like, I am obsessed with changing straps.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So this just like flew in the face of that, right? That style. And as soon as it came out, I'm like, it doesn't matter. I renounced that. I want it. I don't care. And I know it's because I'm biased, but I just love the way it looked. Same thing when they released the MA1. I love it. They released their 03 diver. I love it. The bronze diver. Like, they've just hit so many in the last few years.
Gotcha.
And they've really grown this line too. When they released a GMT and a chronograph. And what's interesting is the 01 to 03, that kind of designated the size of the case.
Okay.
And then, like, some of the functionality came with it. With this, they're keeping it the 05 line, but the GMT is 1 millimeter bigger and the chronograph is 4 millimeters bigger.
Okay.
So they have 3 case sizes in the 05 line. But they've really expanded that out. And I think that's a great direction for them, because then you have, if you come to them for that, right, for the square watch, because that's a style where you can stay with them and do all these other things.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I love the versatility of the brand.
And I do like, I think, part of it is not everybody's into it. So there's that part of you that's
right.
like, I'm kind of a little bit exclusive without having to pay, exclusive prices.
It's an interesting
right?
spin on it. Yeah, because that's what some people don't really think about is the fact that at the end of the day, it's an acquired taste.
It definitely is.
Right?
Yeah.
But that also gives you exclusivity because not everybody's going to show up with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it seems like everybody who owns a Bell&Ross, you talk to them, there are a few people who own one and don't know a ton about it, but most people know everything about the watch, right? Where some other brands, you don't see that. Right. They just don't know as much about it, which doesn't matter. It's just telling time. Doesn't matter what you do. But for me, I like that. Right? I like that there's a community of Bell&Ross fans, and it is global. Like if you get on a forum and stuff, it tends to be people from all over the world because there isn't as many of them. So they all tend to
come together
at the same place. Yeah, it's awesome.